I said, you're going to have to, on the review sheet, you're going to have to write the equation of a line. It's got 4 examples like this. Number 5, 6, 7, and 8 on the review sheet. Number 5 is just like this question or this question. Write the equation of a line through a given point that is either going to be parallel to a given line or it's going to be perpendicular to a given line. Now, in these examples, you're given the equation of the other line in standard form. On your test Thursday, it's going to be a little simpler. It's going to be a lot like the review sheet where the equation of the given line is already in slope-intercept form. So what I have to start with right here, you're not going to have to do this first step. Okay? So let me pull this one up. That way we have room. Because when you do your test, you're going to have to do your work in these little boxes. And these directions are just like directions on your test. Read and follow directions, reduce to lowest terms. The class after this class, you have a choice. After this class, it's all, you choose what you want to be in. Math 4A, or Math 3A, or Math 45, or Math 11, or Math 7. If you're going to choose, take another math. You choose. Math 3A was doing a quiz just like you're doing a test on right here. Write the equation of a line. And they had a slope that was, I don't know. I'm going to make up the numbers. I can't remember exactly what the number was, but it was like 24 over 16. 24 over 16 reduces. It's got common factors, but they didn't reduce it. Just like I keep telling you guys, reduce. I tell them the same thing, and they didn't. And so they're working fractions that are just basically causing them all sorts of problems, and they're getting the question wrong because they didn't reduce it because they ain't listening to me. Nicer numbers. So here we go. Write the answer in the given space if it's provided. So on the 3 and 4, you got a given space provided. You got to show appropriate word to receive full credit. Got to be legible, neat, legible. No decimals unless it's specified by the directions. Again, you're not going to do any work on any scratch paper Thursday. No scratch paper, it's all on the test. Not on the back side or anything like that, because I'm going to grade what's in the boxes. When people do it on something else, they don't number them. They're just all over the place. Here, you want full credit. I got to see it here. That's why you do it in pencil. If you make a mistake, you don't go over to somewhere else. You just erase and start over. Tests need to be done in pencil. Quizzes, again, not so much of a problem. And neatness on pencil. So as you can see, the box is bigger than the one that was in the initial problem. We want parallel. Step 1, whenever you write the equation of a line, step 1 is you got to find the slope. You got to have the slope. So you're not given the slope on the review sheet. I apologize for going back and forth. But on the review sheet, you are not just given a slope here. Perpendicular to this line, so you're kind of given it, but you're not just handed the slope. Through these 2 points. This is just like the quiz. But you're not given the slope. We've got to calculate the slope through the points. Here's a perpendicular question, but not like this one, perpendicular to the y-axis, parallel or perpendicular to, when it's worded like this. The y-axis is vertical. So parallel or perpendicular to vertical is going to be a special case. The x-axis is horizontal. So just like this one, parallel or perpendicular to the x-axis is going to be a special case. The best way to do that one is draw a picture, because it's just going to be either x equals if it's vertical or y equals if it's horizontal. Here, through this point, and you're just given the slope. Step one, you got to find the slope. I found it. So on the warm up, you're not given. You must find. So parallel, the slopes are equal. M's are equal. Just like the two L's, it looks like an equal sign when you turn them sideways, equal slopes. So I need the slope of this line. To find the slope of this line, there's a hint in the direction. Y equals mx plus b. So you're going to take your 4x plus 6y equals 7. And I'm doing it over here. That way I have room to do my question over here. Some of you, when you're doing your question I've seen on the quiz, it's like, all right, I'm doing this whole part right here, and I'm making it this big, leaving you no room to do the rest of the problem. So the analogy, when you play checkers, you make a move in checkers, you don't take your finger off the checker. You got to make the move, and then you think about what the move is going to be that they're going to make. Because you don't want to give them an advantage when you move your checker or chess. You don't want to give them an advantage. You got to think ahead. 1 move, 2 moves, 3 moves ahead. Same thing with driving. When you drive on a freeway, you can't just stare at the one car in front of you. You got to think 2 or 3 moves ahead. You got to look at the car in front of the car in front of you. Because you got to decide what you're going to do based upon what the car in front of you is going to do. And you got to base what they're going to do based on the car in front of that car, what they're going to do. You got to see, brake lights 3 or 4 cars up ahead, so you know to not just wait until the last minute. You got to think ahead. You know you're going to need enough room to do the actual question. Over here on the side, I'm going to figure out the slope. I want to get y by itself. Subtract 4x, subtract 4x. That's a positive 6y. Negative 4x plus 7. And then everybody gets divided by 6. So y is equal to a negative 4 over 6. 4 is 2 times 2, 6 is 2 times 3. The 2's reduce, you're left with 2 over 3x, 2/3 times x. Reduce it. 4 over 6 reduces to 2/3. Okay. And then plus 7 over 6. That doesn't reduce, so that's fine. You're not going to need that line's y-intercept anyway. You just need the slope. You need the slope of the parallel line over here. This slope is negative 2/3. So the parallel line, and that's a symbol for parallel, is going to be a negative 2/3. And then you are completely done with this line and this equation. You don't need it for anything else. Now we're going to find this equation of our line with this slope, and it's going to go through this point. We need to use -9, positive 16. Step 1, we found the slope. Step 2, is it a special case? Special case means, is the slope 0 or is it undefined? The answer is no. It's not 0, it's not undefined. That's special case, vertical and horizontal. Step 3. Remember I tell you it's like a puzzle. You got to find the pieces. The pieces you're supposed to find are the M and the B. So I'm going to write down what the puzzle looks like. Your job is to figure out M and B. You found the first piece. You found the slope. So now you're going to substitute. Plug in the slope. -2/3 times x. You don't know what B is. You gotta bring the b down. But you start by plugging in the slope. You have three variables. You have three things we don't know. We don't know what y is, we don't know what x is, but we're most importantly concerned about what in the world is going to be the b. X and y are going to be a whole bunch of things. Remember, x and y are points on the line. Or in this case, this way, because it's a negative slope. But you got to find the b. To figure out this b, we need to plug something in for the x and the y. That's where, hey, they gave me this for a reason. This is an x and a y, ordered pair. So now we plug this in for x and y. We're going to let the x equal -9 and the y equal 16. Remember what I promised you. I'm going to give you nice numbers that when you plug in the x and y, you're not going to have fractions. After you plug it in, it will reduce with the slope. So if it doesn't reduce, you have something wrong. Either your slope is wrong, or you mixed up the x and the y. Okay? Now, that doesn't mean you have it right. Sometimes I might give you an x and a y where either one, whether if you put them in the wrong place, it will still reduce. So, you still got to put it in the right place. But think about it. X is -9. So if I put 9 right here, 3 will go into 9. Y is the 16. I see students put 16 right here. 3 does not go into 16 even. So if you put the 16 in for the x instead of the y, it's not going to reduce. Okay, this isn't reducing. He said it would. Something's wrong. Come up and ask, or if you figure it out, figure it out. But something's wrong. Either the slope is wrong, or you plugged it in the wrong place. If I told you this was a 18, then 3 would go into 18. So now you better hope that you put it in the right place. 4 for y, 16. -2/3 times x. Be careful, don't forget it's a negative. -9 and then plus b. Don't know what b is, so bring it on down. Be really clear, and that's why I keep putting in the directions. Be neat, because some of you are burying the negative. When you've written down that -9, you write it so small, you can barely see that it's a negative. When you write down the negative, some of you put it over here next to the equals, so you don't see the negative because you think it's part of the equal sign. So you're having trouble reading your own handwriting. This is the same thing Sister Noelle Marie was telling me when I was a sophomore in high school. Remember, I went to San Joaquin Memorial, so the nuns were happy. Okay? You can't even read your own handwriting, so you don't even know what you're doing. And those are the mistakes that you're making. I also had Miss Harry for algebra. Wow. That's a rough name to go through life with Miss Harry. Really? Is that your name or the scripture? She was wonderful. Really? That's when I was a freshman in algebra. My first D in math. So what's the alphabet doing with math? Why we got the X's and the Y's? What in the world is going on? What my life is all? It's over. Because I was good in the 8th grade, but they put me in the honors algebra program, and I'm going. We didn't do this at Sacred Heart. Nope. All the St. Anthony kids, we knew everything. Sacred Heart, no. We were Vikings. We don't do math. Not like this. They were the Raiders. I guess Raiders. So I dropped out of the honors, went into regular geometry. Oh, that makes sense. Love you. I got my life on that. Eventually, when you just give it a chance, if you can stop hating it, let it into your life with a little bit of love. Come back. Negative times negative and positive. 3 goes into 9 3 times, 2 times 3. That's a 6 now. Plus b. Subtract the 6. 16 minus 6 is 10, equal to the b. So this missing b is a 10. So to complete the equation of the line, y equals negative 2/3 x. And that b is now a plus 10. That's the equation of the line that goes through this point and is parallel to this line right here. Okay. And now we got to do perpendicular. The slope of a perpendicular is opposite. You got to change the sign. Opposite, change the sign. And reciprocal. You got to flip it over. Opposite and reciprocal. So the symbol for perpendicular, the slope of the perpendicular line, that's that T that's upside down. Upside down. Okay. The T makes a one goes this way, one goes that way, like there's opposite direction, vertical, horizontal, opposite directions. So you got to change the sign, opposite. And this perpendicular symbol is like a T that got flipped upside down. That's the reciprocal part. Opposite directions, like this. And then you gotta take the reciprocal, which means you gotta flip it. So I need the slope. 3x minus 2y equals 10. We got to do a little brain red alert. Over here, it was plus 6y. When we solve for y, it was a plus 6y. So when we brought it down, it was still just a plus 6y, it was just a 6y. If you're going to divide by 6, because it's being multiplied by 6, divide by 6. Heads up right here. This is where you start to think ahead. You see a negative 2y. Don't lose the negative in your calculations. You're going to take the 3x to the right side. So you're going to have to subtract 3x from both sides. On the left side, it's a negative 2y. Don't forget to bring down the negative. Equal to a negative 3x. And that's a plus 10. It's being multiplied, the y is being multiplied by a negative 2. To undo multiplication by a negative 2, you have to divide by a negative 2. If I divide one term by negative 2, I divide all the terms by negative 2. So we get positive y equal to a negative divided by a negative, that's a positive. And this is 3 over 2 x, positive 3 over 2x. And then a positive over a negative, that would be a negative. 10 divided by 2 is a 5. We are trying to find the slope for our perpendicular line. So the slope of our perpendicular line is the opposite and reciprocal of this slope. This slope over here is 3 over 2. So our perpendicular slope, if that's positive, it's going to have to be a negative, the opposite side, and then you've got to take the reciprocal. So it's going to be what? 2 over 3. That's our perpendicular slope, negative 2/3. We got the slope. And then step 2, is it a special case? No, because it's not 0, it's not undefined. So we write down the equation of a line, so we know what we're plugging into. y equals mx plus b. The only thing we know so far is you got to find m, you got to find b. We know what m is, so we plug in, don't forget the negative. Negative 2/3 times x, and then we got to figure out the b. We're halfway done. Now we just got to figure out b, and to figure out b, we got to plug something in for x and y, and that's where this comes in. The 42, negative 16. So we're going to let the x equal 42, positive 42, and the y is at negative 16. So this y is now positive 16 equal to negative 2/3. Thank you. See? Lost my negative. Negative 2/3 times x is 42. Formula for this x is positive 42. And then plus b. So negative 16. And by the way, thank you for saying something as soon as you make the mistake and not waiting until I get a wrong one. Equals a negative times a positive. Get your sign right. Negative times a positive. Be a negative. This is 42 over 1. So 3 goes into 42 14 times. And I promise to give you something that will reduce really nice right now. 3 times 14 is 42. So now you're just left with 2 times 14. That would be negative 28 plus b. And then we add 28. Negative 16 plus 28 is equal to positive 12. So there's our y-intercept that's missing right here. So now we finish the equation by substituting b with a 12. Y equals negative 2/3 x plus 12. And that's the perpendicular line through that point. That's perpendicular to 3x minus 2y. You're not going to have one of each. You're just going to have one, either parallel or perpendicular. It's on this test. It's on next Thursday's quiz. And it's on the next unit's test. Parallel and or perpendicular to a given line or point. Okay. I want to make sure I say it before I forget, because some people are still doing it, and I'm losing people's emails that are being emailed to me. When you need to email me, please don't just hit reply through Canvas for 2 reasons. Number one, I don't always get a message in Canvas into my Outlook box. In fact, last night I got one. I still can't read it. It won't pop up. Okay, I can't see it. So use your own email account and mail it to my jim.escovel@madeiracollege.edu, the one that's on the syllabus. Okay, that way I'll get it, and that way I can keep track of what you emailed me. I can't extract your email and put it in my Math 103 folder separately from when you hit like a reply from the YouTube posting. It's going to stay in that group of YouTube postings under everybody else that I sent it to. And if I accidentally hit reply all, then whatever I send you is going to go to everybody. I don't want to do that. If you accidentally hit reply all, it would go out to everybody, and you don't want to do that either. So try to email me through college.edu from your own email account. Try not to use that, the campus, please. That way I can keep track of it. And that way I know that we've communicated. Because sometimes the students say, but I told you, and I'm going, I can't find the email. Now I have it in full. Okay. Yes. So that was negative 2/3. And I plugged 42 in for x. So that's negative 2/3 times 42 over 1. 42 is 3 times 14. Those are the factors of 42. 3 times 14. Because it's going to reduce like I told you. So when you have 2 times 3 times 14 over 3 times 1, the 3's reduce. You can reduce before you multiply. And so you have smaller numbers to multiply. 2 times 14 would be negative 28 over 1 times 1, and then negative 28 over 1 is just negative 28. If you just multiply across, negative 2 times 42 is negative 84 over 3. And then you want to make sure, hey, he said it was going to go in nicely. I talked about last week the rules of division. If it's even, you can divide by 2. If it's multiple of 5, you can divide by, it should end in a 5 or 0. If the sum of the digits add up to a number that is divisible by 3, I can divide by 3. 8 plus 4 is 12. 3 goes into the number 12. Since 3 goes into 8 plus 4, then 3 goes into 84. So 84, and if I hit divide by 3, 3 goes into 8 2 times. 2 times 3 would be 6 in the 10th place. That's a 0 to 1, so you subtract, that's 4. 8 times minus 6 is 2. And then in the 1's place, 3 times 8 is 24. Okay. Or you can just use your calculator, 84 divided by 3. But you can also reduce it before you multiply, so you have smaller things to multiply if it does reduce. Okay. Okay. The third question on here, domain range. Make sure you follow directions. The reason why I'm giving you this example again is because I want to make sure you understand what I'm looking for. Because this should be one of the simplest questions on your test. State the domain and range of each relation, then indicate which relations are also functions by circling yes or no. So if it's a function, circle the yes. If it's not a function, circle the no. If it's not a function, it's because one of the domain elements repeated itself. One of the x's is in 2 separate ordered pairs with different y's. X cannot repeat if it's a function. So if you have an x that's the same in one of those ordered pairs, you don't have a function. If all the x's are different, then yes, it's a function. Circle the yes. And then this part, you must list the elements in ascending order. So from smallest to biggest. No decimals, unless I give you a decimal here. And if there's a number that repeats, you only write it once. No repeats. I'm going to do this. Put it all on the screen. So if I was you, first thing I would do is, before I just write in my answer for the domain, I'm going to see what I'm working with. My domain is consistent of, I have a -4, then I have a 9, and then there's a +4, and a square root of 5, and a negative 9, and a negative 8 over 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 order pairs. So I should have 6 x values, 6 domain elements. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, got it. Because if you only wrote down 5, you missed something. Out of all these x values, are any of these the same? No. So right now you go straight down to here. Yeah, that's a function. X does not repeat. Okay. If this 4 right here, if it was negative 4 instead, so you'd have 2 x values that were both negative 4s, then the answer would be no, that's not a function. Okay. But this one is an example of a function. Now, we got to put it in ascending order from smallest to biggest. Let's focus on the negatives. There's your negative 4, your negative 9, oh, fractions. Okay. You can change it to a decimal just so you can see where it would fit in between or left or right of the other negatives. Even a mixed number would be fine. 3 goes into 8 2 times with 2 left over. 8 over 3. 3 goes into 8. 3 times 2 is a 6. Minus, we get 8 minus 6 is the remainder of 2. That means this is a mixed number is 2 2/3. So this is technically negative 2 2/3 or negative 2.6666 repeat. And you do that on calculator. What you need to know is which one of these negatives is the smallest. The negative 4, the negative 9, or the negative 8 over 3. The negative 9 is smallest. So from smallest to biggest, you have negative 9. Oh, make sure I'm going to check that off because I took it down already. What's the next biggest?
Negative 4.
Then you have your negative 4. And then the last negative you have is this negative 8 over 3. Now notice I didn't put the decimal because you know decimals. And why not just write, the regular improper fraction? Get used to improper fractions. It's always best to work with impropers. So that takes care of my negatives. Now I got my positives. 9, 4, and square root of 5. Well, if that's causing you trouble, the square root of 5 is approximately, you punch it up on a calculator, approximately 2.23, I think. It's bigger than 2, but less than 3. So what's the next biggest domain element? And again, no decimals, square root of 5. But I wrote down the decimal, so I know where it would fit in terms of the other x values. And then what's the next biggest x? The 4, and the last one is 9. Now, just like I told you last week, I'm not going to give you 6 ordered pairs. I'm going to give you at most 4 ordered pairs. And I could give you pi, and I can give you some of those square roots. I can give you fractions. But you don't have 6 of them to worry about. You would have 4 of them at most. So now I'm going to do the range. I'm going to do give my room back. My ranges range from, and so I'm just going to write down what I'm working with. I got a 5. I got a square root of 3. I have a negative 8. There's pi, a 5 over 3, and a 5. Make sure I have 6 range elements. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I got them all down. And what's the smallest one? Yeah, that's the only negative one. So that has to be the smallest domain size or range size. Negative 8 goes first. And then you have a few unknowns, the square root 3 versus the pi versus 5 over 3. Well, square root 3, just from left to right, you can punch it up again, but the square root 3 is approximately 1.732. And the reason why I know that so well is because square root 3 is a very important number in geometry and in trigonometry. It happens all the time. And whenever you need to estimate it, it's approximately 1.732. But that's not all it goes on forever, and it doesn't repeat a pattern, and it doesn't have a last digit. It's just like the number pi. Pi, 3.14. 1415, 3.14 is fine. And then 5 over 3. 3 goes into 5 once with a remainder of 2. So this is the same as 1 2/3, which is 1.6666 feet. I got the superstitions. I always try not to write 3 sixes if I can avoid it. If I'm going to write 3 sixes, I'm going to tattoo it on somebody's head. Well, you know, if you're going to do it, you might as well go away. So on the positives, what's the next biggest range number?
5 over 3.
5 over 3. So 5 is not, and then 1.732, 1.6. If you look at money, $1.73 versus $1.66, $1.66 is smaller than $1.73. So 5 over 3 is next. So I got that one. And then the next biggest one, between 1.732 and 3.14. Square root 3 would be next. Good, no decimals, write the original number. And then 3.14 versus the 5s, the pi. And then you have 2 5s, so you only write it once. No repeats. Okay. All right. So you can have 2 problems when you do that. What's that? Take louder.
Where's the other side?
The other pi? There's only one pi. There's only one pi. I said 5.
Oh,
There's 2 5s.
oh.
So you're gonna write it once. And last but not least, you have a solve bonus question. So just like I showed you last week, Thursday, a solve question that has fractions. So the key to solving a problem that has fractions like this is to undo the fractions. And the way you undo the fractions is you multiply every term in the equation by the least common denominator. And that's going to undo your fraction. Because the reason fractions exist is because of the denominator. Denominators mean division. 5 divided by 4, 5 divided by 8, x divided by 6, 11 divided by 3. To undo division, you multiply. And if you multiply everybody by something that it would go into, it's going to get rid of your fractions. So the least common denominator for 4, 8, 6, and 3. Now, don't worry about trying to figure it out for all 4 of them. Just do 2 of them. For 4 and an 8. What's the first number that 4 and 8 go into? No, that 2 goes into them. Right? So first number, 8. 8 can't go into 4. 8 doesn't go into 4. We're talking about multiples, not factors. Not what goes into them, but what do they go into? See, if I multiply by a 4, yeah, it undoes that fraction, but multiply this by 4, I still have a 2 down there. It's not going to undo that fraction. So what's the common denominator for 4 and 8? It would have to be an 8. The first number, they both go into evenly. is an 8. So for the 4 and the 8, the least common denominator would be an 8. And now go to the next one. You have an 8 and a 6. So if you're looking at an 8 and a 6, what's the first number 8 and 6 can go into evenly? What would the least? So if you had a fraction like 3 over 8 plus 1 over 6, what's the least common denominator that you would have to make to add those together? 24. 24. So think about it. You have an 8, you have a 6. 8 goes into 8, the next one would be 16. 8 goes into 16. 8 times 3, 24. 8 times 4, 32. 8 times 5, 40. 8 times 6, 48. Okay. 6 times 1 is 6. 6 times 2 is 12. 6 times 3 is 18. 6 times 4, 24. The first number they both go into evenly is 24. That's the least common denominator. Now, you could use 48, but it's a bigger number. You're going to have bigger numbers at the end, more work to do. That's why it's the least common denominator. The first one, they can both go into. So 24. So now for 8 and 6, you're working with a 24. So the last one is the 3. So now you got to consider a 24 and a 3. Now, what's the first number that 24 and 3 both go into even? 24. So if you're comparing 24 and 3, 24 and 3, 24 and 3. 1 times 24, 2 times 24 is 48. 3 times 24 is going to be 72. 4 times 24 is going to be 96. I hope it's not that. 1 times 3, 2 times 3 is 6, 3 times 3 is 9, 4 times 3 is 12, 5 times 3 is 15, 6 times 3 is 18, 7 times 3 is 21, 8 times 3 is 24. Oh. 3 and 24 both go to 24. So I just went from left to right. The first number for 4 and 8 is an 8, and then next number is 6. First number for 8 and 6, 24, and then 24 and 3, the first number is 24. So the least common denominator is a 24. So that's what we do next. That's what I'm going to multiply every fraction by. Everybody gets multiplied by 24. So I'm going to make this a little bit bigger because it's just too cramped. So 5 over 4x, and then plus a 5 over 8 equals an x over 6 plus an 11 over 3. Everybody gets multiplied by 24. So you get a 24. You get a 24, you get a 24, and you get a 24. Now remember why we're doing it. To undo the fractions. To undo the fractions. 24 times 5 over 4. 4 goes into 24 6 times. You're left with 6 times 5. That's 30 times x, 30x. No more fraction then. Then plus 8 goes into 24 3 times. You're left with 3 times 5. That's a 15. No more fraction there. Equals 6 goes into 24 4 times. You're left with 4 times x, 4x. No more fraction there. Plus 3 goes into 24 8 times. You're left with 8 times 11. That's 88. No more fractions. that was why we did multiply everybody by 4. Both as a tribute to Kiefer Sullivan from 24 and JB from Kingsman. You guys ever see Kingsman? Oh, man. Good movie. The first one's really good. Second one is okay. Haven't seen the third one yet, but first one, I can't remember the main character's name. It's like whenever I want to talk about something, whatever I need to say, it's never there when it used to. But they were supposed to pick out a dog as the potential secret agents. He picks out this one really cute puppy. They raise the puppy, and he thinks it's a pit bull, but it's really a puppy. So the pug only gets like this big. He thought it was going to get this big. Okay, and so he named the dog JB. Oh, James Bond? No. Oh, Jason Bourne? No. Jack Bauer. And then I'm using a reference of Jack Bauer from 24, and I bet you guys never even see 24 anyway, so never mind. I'll crawl back in my 80s time machine. Okay, minus 4x from both sides. You want to get all your x's on one side, minus 4x. When we saw 30x minus 4x is 26x. You still have plus 15 equals 88. You gather all your x's on one side. Now you got to get your constants over to the right. You want to separate the variables and the constants. To undo plus 15, you subtract 15 from both sides. So you're left with a 26 times x equal to 88 minus 15 is equal to 75. And then to solve for x, 26 times x, you undo multiplication by dividing by 26. Divide by 26. And you have x equals, make sure you simplify if possible. 26. The only thing going into 26 is 2 times 13. Down here, 2 times 13. So you know you're not going to be able to reduce 75 by 2 because it's not even. And then you have to check 13. 75 divided by 13, no. 75 would be 3 times 25. 75 is 3 times 25, which is 3 times 5 times 5. This is 3 times 5 times 5. So if you look at the factors of 75 and 26, they have no factors in common. This is your final answer, 75 over 26. It doesn't reduce. No decimals, just make sure you simplify it. But you see right here at the bottom of the box, this is where you put your final answer. If you don't put it in that spot, I take off a point because I want to find it. It's like if you didn't bubble it in on a Scantron. You circle it on your test, but you never bubble it in. I run the Scantron through, it's going to get marked wrong. Here, I would have, you would at least get some of the points. I would just take off a point. Okay, so we're going to take our break, come back at, this time we're going to come back at 9, just call it 9:40. So, well, let's call it, okay, let's call it 9:42. No way to get you 10 minutes, but we're going to come back and we want to finish up these examples. We have 5 examples left to go over in 3.6. This is what we did last Thursday. The ones over here, this is what we've already done from 3.4, 3.5, and 3.6. These are the ones that got to finish up in 3.6, and then go to the review sheet. Call it a day. Going back at 9:42. Okay, number 21 from 3.6. Out here, f of x equals negative 2x plus 8. And you're supposed to write the domain using interval notation. Now, interval notation is something that is in Math 201, Algebra 1, in Chapter 2 of this textbook. So it would have been fresh out of the Chapter 2, we're now in Chapter 3. Don't know if you've ever seen interval notation yet, because I never taught you Math 201. Usually I know it's something that's been taught, but now we haven't taught that in 4 years, so couldn't tell you if you know it or not. That's why this is a good place to actually get it, because it's not on this test, but it's going to be on the next one. It's a good place to start. All linear equations. If you have a linear equation, y equals mx plus b, and then you have two special cases, horizontals and verticals. Horizontal is y equals a number, vertical x equals a number. All linear equations except one of those is always going to be a function. All linear equations are functions except. Now, y equals mx plus b is going to look like this or this, because the special cases are this and this. So it's going to be somewhere in between. Those are functions because it passes the vertical line test. X never repeats. So the two special cases, one of them is never going to be a function. One of them will always be a function. The two special cases, horizontal, vertical. Which one will never be a function? The vertical. Because on a vertical line, if I were to draw the vertical line, now remember, the vertical line, x equals a constant, like x equals 2. So there's my xy axis. So right here at x equals 2, there's 1 point. And then up here, maybe this is 2, 7. This might be 2, 3. Down here might be 2, -5. And then you draw your vertical line going through all those points where x is always 2. That's what makes it vertical. X is always the same number. But if you're a function, x can't repeat. On the vertical line, the hexes repeat for every single point. Vertical lines cannot be functions except vertical lines. So those vertical lines cannot be a function. The domain of linear functions. What can you plug in? What goes into a linear function? The x's is always going to be. Now, the way we would say it to begin with would be all real numbers. You could plug in every single number. So if we take any linear equation, remember when you graph a line, you need to graph it with arrows because it goes forever left and right. So if I just drew a line with a positive slope, like this, the domain is what x's are going into this line that goes into this linear function. Well, you're plugging every single x on the x-axis that goes that way and you're plugging in every single x that goes into that direction that way. So you're basically saying the domain is all real numbers. That's one way to say it. But that's not a mathematical way to say it. That's a way to write it down, saying it in words. In mathematics, we want to write it down using symbols. So on a number line, this is a linear function because remember what f of x replaces. F of x is replacing who? What would be here instead of an f of x? A y. It's the same as having a y equals negative 2x plus 8. That's why we know that this is linear, because that's just an x to the first. It's going to be a line. So it's a line. The domain is all real numbers. So on a number line, you would shade everything on the number line to the left of 0. And you would shade everything on the number line to the right of 0. That's all real numbers. Everything to the left and right of 0. So you can say all real numbers. You can draw a picture of what all real numbers look like. But still, that's not mathematics. That's not communicating in a mathematical way. So then you take it to this next level. The inequality way, less than and greater than. What I just shaded are the x's. The x's that get to go into this function. That's what I just shaded on the number. Those x's are bigger than and less than the number that is all the way down there and the number that's all the way down there that you can never get to. When I draw this arrow going all the way forever to the right, forever, what do we use to call forever down there? Infinity. Who's down there that you can never touch? You can never, just, as soon as you think you're at infinity, oh, it's one more over. I'm at infinity, no, one more over. Hey, I'm at infinity, no, you still got one more over. You can never get to infinity. Infinity is not a number. It's just a, you gotta keep going. So the x's that you can plug in have to be smaller than positive infinity. And down there, if that's positive infinity to the right, then to the left down here is negative infinity on the left side. So the x's have to be between negative infinity and positive. Still, that's a lot to write. This is inequalities, less than greater. Interval notation is what the homework wants. So interval notation uses parentheses and brackets. Parentheses and brackets. Brackets if you have equals, like less than or equal to, greater than or equal to. When you have something that's less than or equal to, you put a bracket. Greater than or equal to, you use a bracket. We'll run into that when we get into chapter 9. Not right now. But you know what? I take that back. And I'll show you in one of the actual problems, it's a picture. The actual code. But when you don't equal, when it has no equals, it's parentheses. No equals, parentheses. The interval that you can pick your x's and plug them in. Parentheses, it goes from negative infinity to positive infinity, parentheses. Now, it ain't an ordered pair because you can't really plot it because you could never get to the infinities anyway. How do we know it's not an ordered pair? The context of the question. The question is asking for the interval, so you wrote interval notation. So what is the domain of this function? It's the interval from negative infinity to infinity. Parentheses when you cannot have an equal. You can never equal the infinities. Infinities are always parentheses. Always parentheses. Never a bracket. And you'll see what brackets look like when we get to that question. I think it's number 23. Sorry, this is 20, not 21. This is 20. So, let me pop that up on overhead. So the domain in interval notation. So right here, here's a couple of parentheses, I can put right here. And it goes from negative, so I just hit the minus on the keypad. And then right here is the symbol of infinity. Negative infinity. Right there's a symbol for infinity. And then move over. And then I just hit the infinity because that's positive. Check my answer and get pat on the head. This is 21. Down. This is not a linear function. This is not mx plus b. Okay. This would be known as a rational function. Rational. Why rational? The key word is ratio. Ratio means fractions. Not fraction. But you're not having to solve anything. You just need to figure out what is the domain. What can I plug into this rational function? The problem with fractions, you can't divide by zero. That's the only thing you have to worry about. You cannot divide by zero. If there is something that you would plug in that would make your denominator zero, you've got trouble. If your function was this, if it was f of x equals 1 over just a simple x, just 1 over x by itself, we would say with words, we would say the domain is all real numbers. You can plug in every single real number except x cannot equal 0. You cannot plug in 0 for x. Because if you try to do f of 0, you get 1 over 0, and that's undefined. You can't plug 0 in for that x. Not allowed. So that's what you have to be worried about, is what would make the denominator 0 if it's rational. If you got x's down. This is not 1 over x, it's 1 over x plus 7. What could possibly make this x plus 7 equal a 0? What might make, question mark, a 0 down here if you plug something into that x? What would you plug in? -7. If you plug in -7, h of a -7, you get 1 over -7 plus 7. -7 plus 7 is 1 over 0. -7 bad. -7 is not allowed. Because if you use it, you get 0 down there. And that's not allowed. So we would say the domain for this one, x plus 7, domain is all real numbers, except you can't use -7 if we wrote it out. Okay. Now, draw a picture of this number line. On a number line, it looks like this. So you can't use -7. So if I was going to graph a number line, there's my 0. Over here at -7, you would put an open circle on the number line because you can't plug it in. But you can plug everything to the right of -7. You can plug all of those in, and you can plug everything to the left of the -7. So you can plug in everything to the left and to the right of the -7. That's what you can plug in. Just you can't use that whole, that -7 right there. Inequalities less than, greater than. You could say that all of these x's on this side, all of these x's, they have to be less than -7. That's what these represent. They're less than -7. These right here, all of those x's are greater than -7 because they're to the right of -7. Because you can't use -7, you're either to the left of it or to the right of it. Now we're missing one tiny little piece. We gotta, connect those two statements together. When you don't have a cohesive one statement that covers it all, there's an or in between. What x's can I plug into this? I can plug in x's that are less than -7, or I can plug in x's that are greater than -7. When we get into chapter 9, we will talk about how this is a combination of the two graphs. This is a disjunction, a union of the sets, versus a conjunction, an overlap of the set, an intersection. Ands versus ors. So now, we don't want inequalities, we want interval notation. So, graphically, who's down there forever down there? Negative infinity. These answers, parentheses, they go from negative infinity, and we always write the interval as if we're going from left to right. They go from negative infinity and they stop at -7. And a parentheses on that -7 because you cannot equal the -7. Over here, the next set of numbers that we can use, they start at -7, parentheses, because again, there's no equals. And those answers go all the way to the right. And who's down here forever to the right? Positive infinity. Now, we need to replace or. We're not going to, we're mathematicians. We don't write, 2 letters to represent or. Or means union. The union of these two sets of numbers. And the symbol for union is just this cup. It's a cup. It's called a cup, but it's just a U, just like a union. So you're going to put a U in between. And that's how you write it using interval notation. When you translate this, the domain is everything from -7, from negative infinity to -7, not including -7. Union, everything from -7 to infinity, not including the -7. Okay. When we get to chapter 9, we'll figure out the word for and. And means intersection. And if that's the symbol for union, the symbol for intersection is the upside down cup. And that means and. Now, you don't have to have those memorized because we use this. Type it in. So you got parentheses. And we have negative infinity all the way to -7. Oops, let me check that will be wrong. And then I make sure I'm outside of the parentheses. Got to move the arrow over. And then right here, union, intersection, ors, ands. But if I just, put the mouse right over it, hover, right there it says union. Okay. Over here, intersection. So I want the union symbol. And then I want another parenthesis. Because you gotta go from -7 to infinity. I didn't come on. I did. -7 to. You raise everything. All right. Again, this is not on the test. You're not going to worry about this on this test. I'll tell you right now, on number 22, the answer is all real numbers. So you're just going to type in negative infinity to infinity for an absolute value. 23 though, you're supposed to use the picture and you got to do domain and range. Domain and range. Domain is the x's. Domain is the x's. And you don't have a graph or an equation or a function given to you. You just have a picture to look at. Sometimes that's easier. You see how this arrow is going forever to the left? That means every single x coordinate eventually is going to have something up there. So it's using every single x to the left to negative infinity. And then there's a solid dot right there, solid. And it's using every single, an arrow right there. It's using forever. It's going to use every single number to the right. So the domain, it's using every single number on the horizontal number line from negative infinity to infinity. So the domain of this is all real numbers, negative infinity to infinity. But now the range. The best way to see the range sometimes is the picture. The range is your y. The range is your y's. So look at this picture. This point right here, x is -2, y is up here at +3, -2, +3. That's where this point is right there. Now, the y's. Are there any y's below the 3? Does the graph come down here? No. All of the y's that come out of this graph are above the 3. They're bigger than the 3. All of the y's are greater than the 3. Okay? It's a solid circle. So it also equals the 3. Every single y is greater than or equal to that 3. Does that just make sense, yes or no? Because this is the first time we have something to worry about with an equals. The other ones, the only example we had was negative infinity to infinity. And then we had one with a hole in it. So there's no equals on the hole. Now we've got an equals. If you look at a number line for this, if I was going to graph all of these answers on a number line, 1, 2, 3, because you have equal to 3, equal, 3 works. Instead of an open circle, it would be a solid circle on the 3. And the rest of the y's are greater, and they're bigger than the 3, and you would shade the number line to the right. That's what greater than or equal to 3 looks like on a number line. Inequality, number line. The interval notation. So the answers from left to right, they start at 3 and they go forever to the right, which is infinity. Infinity is always a parenthesis. But this time it equals the 3 instead of not equal. So this time you put a bracket on the 3. When you have an equals, it's a bracket. Look at it like this. Greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, have a little foot at the bottom, not like, a solid line, an equals. So that means you're going to use a bracket when you have an equals. When you just have greater than, so this was x has to be greater than -7, or x was less than -7. If you're really sloppy drawing your less than to greater than, oh, that's like a parentheses. No equals there, no bracket. But when you have less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, there's a straight line at the bottom, so make sure you have a straight line, which means brackets. When I do the interval notation. Okay. So first thing they want is domain. We've got 2 parts. So we use all real numbers, negative infinity. 2, all infinity. And then the range. Now the bracket is on your keyboard, or you can pull up. If you don't have a keyboard that you're working on, you hit more, and you have more things to choose from. Okay. I don't want that. Bracket. That's so you have to pull up your that. So no. 3, comma, and then infinity, and then a parentheses. And then 30. All they want from you to do on 30. What's the point of intersection? Find the coordinates for the point of intersection for these 2 lines. Well, they line it up pretty well. So they want the ordered pair where these 2 lines intersect. So right here, x is -4, and the y is a +4. So nothing fancy. How do I know that's not an interval instead of an ordered pair? Because they're asking for an ordered pair, the context of the question. And then 34. So 34, I wrote it over here. F of x is equal to x squared plus 13. So whatever you're going to plug in for x, the first thing you do is you're going to square it and then you add 13. So A, what does f of 13 equal? So you're going to substitute 13 into the function. So for A, f of 13. So if I replace this x with a 13, then this x gets replaced with a 13. So whatever goes in for x, you're going to square it, and then you're going to add 13 to it. So f of 13 would be 169 plus 13. So f of 13 is equal to 182. Okay. And then part B, they want to know what does f of A equal? So instead of plugging in the number, they want you to plug in A in for the x. So if I replace this x Whatever I replace it with, if I replace it with an A, then I replace this one. All the X's get replaced with an A. So that X becomes an A. So this X, instead of X squared, is now A squared plus 13. I don't know what A is. Simplify if possible. Well, there it is. That's as far as I can go because you can't combine them together. They're not like terms. So the final answer is just A squared plus 13. A to the second. Okay. The review sheet. There's the review. The directions on the review are just like the directions on your test. Over here on the far right, we're going to do a comparison to the review and the test. You have the first questions 1 through 4. On the review, and then look at the test. Find the slope of the, through the following pair of points. For the ordered pair that's given in decimal, provide your final answer in decimal rounded to the nearest hundred. Make sure you do that correctly. That means you're going to be using a calculator and giving your final answer to the nearest 100, 2 decimal places. So on your test, you have 3 of those. So on the review sheet, 4 of them. On your test, only 3. Then the next 4 questions, write the equation of line slope intercept form. There's 4 on the review, so that's 5 through 8. On your test, you're going to have 4 of those. And they're going to be exactly the same time. Write the equation line, slope intercept form. If not possible, use the appropriate special case notation. So that would be horizontal or vertical, x equals a constant, or y equals a constant. Then you have the next 4, 9 through 12. Graphing. Make sure you really follow directions when you graph and label the following linear equations or functions. You must plot and label at least 2 points and then draw your line neatly. Don't forget your arrowheads. There's 4 on the review sheet, and there are, look at this, 4 on the test. And complete with your graphing X and Y axis. Great. Remember what I told you. There's no reason to count by 2 on these boxes. Okay, everything that I'm going to give you is going to be nicely fitting in a -7 to 7, -7 to 7 units. Okay, no reason to count by 2. It's just going to throw you off. So 4 of those. And then the next 2, domain and range, just like we practiced. And then on the test, 2 of those. So 13 and 14. You got 2 of those. And last but not least, function substitution, 15 through 20. Given 3 different functions. F, G, and H, you're told to plug in something into those functions. On your test, you have a total of 4. let f of x, let g of x, and h of x equal whatever, and then plug something in for those substitute numbers. And then you can see right here, 3 bonus questions at 3 points apiece. So right here, there are 17 problems, okay? At 5 points each. That's 85 possible. 3 bonus. 3 points each. So that's 9 points bonus possible. So you can max at 94 out of 85 on this first test. And yes, look at this, the boxes are much bigger. Okay, boxes are much bigger. When you start to say, I can't make that, I can't write those little tiny little boxes. Boxes are much bigger. I only did this so I could just quickly go through it. And the answers to all of the review sheet questions are right here. Now, before you panic, I didn't get all those points. Remember, not everybody's going to have the same points plotted. I plotted a whole bunch of them because I don't know what you guys are going to plot. You only need 2. You only need 2 points. So if you have any of those 2, hey, you're fine. So what do you want to see? You all see.
Did you do a graph question?
Tell me which one. Number 9. So f of x equals 3 over 2x. Wait a second, where's the y? Well, remember, this is exactly the same as y equals 3 over 2x. When you see this g of x, function notation, g of x is just replacing y equals -2. So if you're given function notation, f of x, g of x, h of x, anything with function notation, you can just rewrite it and put a y in it. It's the same as a y. So let me go read it up. So start with your f of x equals 3 over 2 times x. So that means y equals 3 over 2x. The goal for graphing is to get it in slope intercept form. So you know what the slope and the y-intercept is, because that's the easiest thing to graph. Y is by itself, so we have y equals mx plus b. So the slope is the coefficient of our x. So what is the coefficient of x right here? 2. And then b. Well, if you see nothing right there, what number would you add so we have nothing right there? There would have been a plus 0. So b is a 0. Because if you have y equals 3 over 2x plus 0, when you simplify, that's just y equals 3 over 2x. Okay? So when you're graphing, the first thing you do is you plot the y-intercept. If the y-intercept is 0, so on the y-axis, that means it's right here at the origin. And the origin is the only point I told you, you don't have to label at all. It just gets too messy trying to label the origin with either 0, 0 or putting a single 0. So just, you don't have to worry about labeling the origin. And then from that first point that you plot, you count the slope, rise over run. And that's where 3/2 comes in. This is the rise, the y's is the rise is y's. And then the run. So we're going to go to the next point. We're going to go up 3. So from here, up 1, 2, 3, and then we go to the right 2. So up 1, 2, 3, and over 1, 2, and that's the next point on the line. Now you need to plot and label at least 2 points. Well, there's my first point. I don't have to worry about labeling the origin. The second point that I plotted, I now need to label. The slope was 3/2, but the 3/2 is not the labeling, because that's not the address. That's the directions on how I got there. The labeling is the coordinates. X is a 2, and the Y is a 3. That's the ordered pair 2, 3. And the biggest mistake is, hey, I just went up 3/2, so the answer must be 3, 2. No, that's the direction. That's not your address, that's the directions of how you got it. Then you have your 2 points. Make sure you have a nice straight edge. Take a pencil. And draw your line, and don't forget your arrows. What else? Number 2. Good. Find the slope through the ordered pair. The ordered pair is decimals. So you're going to have all the decimals. So make sure your calculator's at the ready. And again, I don't have calculators here to lend. And you are not allowed to use your phone. So we're using the point -4.29, -3.84, and 8.56, -7.95. And the directions for the ordered pair that's given in decimal, your final answer, you can round to the nearest 100. So, slope. Slope is the difference in the y's, y sub 2 minus y sub 1, over the difference in the x's, x sub 2 minus x sub 1. Subtract the y, subtract the x's. And then you got to pick. You got to choose which y you want to start with, which determine which x you're going to use. So which y do you want me to start with, 3.84 or -7.95? So if I start with 3.84, my slope is going to equal 3.84 minus the other one. The other one's a negative. When I substitute a negative, use parentheses, minus -7.95 over, since I started with this y coordinate in the numerator, I got to start with this x coordinate in the denominator, -4.29 minus that x is 8.56. So I don't need parentheses because there's no negative. It's just minus 8.56. Now, take your time. Especially right here, 2 consecutive negatives is going to become a plus. This is 3.84 plus 7.95 over, now, I don't have consecutive signs to worry about here. It's just negative 4.29 minus 8.56. So that's going to be negative, that's going to be negative 12.85. Okay, so right? Okay, so make sure. Yeah. You can, but what I chose, what I was told to choose, this was my X2, Y2, and that's my X1, Y1, is what I was chose to start with this Y instead of starting with that one. It doesn't matter because I could have given you the ordered pair and I could have written it, all right, 8.56, negative 7.95, and negative 4.29, comma, 3. I could have written the problem down like this instead. So then you probably would have went to here anyway. But I wrote them down like this, so everybody wants to go here because that's the second Y. But the bottom line is, if you make your substitutions and you're careful with your signs, it's going to come out to be the same answer. Now, my numerator, $11.79 over a negative 12.85. 11.79, right? And when you're looking at, it's just money. $3.84 plus $7.95. It's just money. When you think about money, people don't ever get money wrong. Okay. First thing you got to make sure, a positive over a negative is going to be a negative. Keep track of your sign. I know my slope is going to be a negative. And now here comes the calculator. Make sure you punch it in correctly. Which one's bigger, the numerator or the denominator? Which one's bigger, the numerator or the denominator? The numerator is smaller. The numerator is on top, the denominator for down, D for down, is the bottom. 11 over a 12. Just look at that, relatively speaking, 11 over 12. So if I take a numerator and divide by a denominator that's smaller, it's less than 1. Anytime you have a smaller numerator compared to a bigger denominator, it's going to be less than 1 because this can't go into that. You can't go into it, you can't even go into it one time. It's less than 1. If the numerator was bigger, the top was bigger, then you can go in more than once. So when I do this division, I better get something less than a 1. If you don't, with you thinking ahead, you put it in backwards. It's the top divided by the bottom, just like a fraction. So it's going to be, and here's the deal. I don't care about using the negative on my calculator. I already wrote down the answer is negative. So I'm just going to type in 11.79 divided by 12.85. So the aim, right now, my answer is negative 0.9175097276. And if I type that into my final answer, or write that in, that's wrong. Because the directions say round to the nearest 100th. Round to the nearest 100th. So now, of course, I wrote it so you can see it. Negative 0.917. 100th is in the pennies, like 100th of a dollar is 1 cent in the pennies. So that's right here. So does that one round up to a 2 or does it stay a 1? up to a 2, because in the thousands, that's a 7. If the thousands is 5 or more, 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9, then this rounds up to the next number. If this is 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4, then it doesn't round at all, it's 1. So the final answer down here, my slope equals, there's going to be an m at the bottom of the box, negative 0.91. If you don't put the 0, I'm not going to take off any points, but make sure you can really see the decimal. My bad. It doesn't, it does. I started talking and I stopped thinking. Thank you. Started talking, which is what probably causes the most problems in a marriage. You start talking, you don't think. Talking again.
And we just have to show all these work in the.
Well, yeah, you gotta show the substitution, okay? Because you want to get it right, because you don't want to plug in the wrong things. Plus, if you can get it wrong, how am I supposed to give you partial credit? I don't know where the mistake was made. And that's why I put, see, I have it all. I don't know if I have it all, but I have those little things in my direction. You must show appropriate work to receive full credit. So it's kind of like, yeah, it says right here in the fine print. What else? 5, 6. Now, this test is not going to take 2 hours and 15 minutes. You get the whole class to do it, but if you want to ask questions at 8:30 until about 9 o'clock, I'll let you ask questions from 8:30 until 9 o'clock, or if you want to stop, we can stop and start the test. But it does not take 2 hours 15. When you're done, you can go, because we're not going to lecture. Y equals negative 5 over 2x plus 2. And we want a perpendicular line that goes through the points negative 5, positive 3. All right. So you got to write the equation of the line. First thing you need is the slope. So my line is perpendicular to that line, so I need the perpendicular slope. Perpendicular slope is opposite and reciprocal. So over here, the warm-ups that we did today were given in standard form. You had to put it in slope-intercept form. This one is already in y equals mx plus b notation. So you're not going to have to do any real work to figure out what is the slope of the original line. What is it? Well, the slope of this one. Negative 5 over 2. So the slope of my line is going to be positive 2 over 5. My perpendicular is opposite reciprocal. Step 1, find the slope. If it was parallel, then I would have used negative 5 over 2, equal. So I got my slope. It is not a special case because it's not 0 or undefined. So I go y equals mx plus b. And then I plug in my slope, 2/5. So y equals 2 over 5 times x plus, got to figure out the b. To figure out the b, you plug in x and y. Here, the x and y on the line is x is negative 5. And the y is a 3. So y is a 3 equals 2 over 5 times x. And we're plugging negative 5 in for x plus b. We still have to solve for b. So 3 equals positive times a negative is a negative. 5 goes into 5 one time. So you're left with 2 times -1. 2 times -1 is -2 plus b. And my promise was it will reduce nicely right now. And if it doesn't, you can ask. To solve for b, you just add 2 to both sides. 3 plus 2, 5 is the b. So you're missing that b. It's now you know it's a 5. So y equals 2/5 times x plus a 5. And then number 6, it goes through the points, -2, -3, and -1, 0. Step 1, gotta find the slope. Well, this time slope's not handed to you. But this is just like the quiz you took. Now remember, tests are not open note. Tests are not open note. Quizzes are, tests are not. Tests is you, the test, a pencil, straight edge, calculator, that's all you do. So, you need the slope. Y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. So which y would you like to start with, -3 or the 0? So if I start with this y, that's 0 minus this y is at -3, parentheses -3, over, if I start with this y, in the numerator, I start with this x down below, in the denominator, -1 minus this x is a -2, parentheses -2. Remember, when you do slope, you're subtracting difference of y's, difference of x. Take your time. This is 0. Now that's 0 plus 3. This is -1, but now you have minus and negative, so that's -1 plus 2. 0 plus 3 is 3. -1 plus 2 is 1. Okay. One more time. Simplify. Reduce to those terms. 3 over 1 is just 3. If you use 3 over 1, you're going to start seeing things that aren't there. And if you write 3 over 1 in your final answer, I got to take off a point because it's not simplified. Okay? My slope is 3. 3 is not 0. It's not undefined. So step 2, is it a special case? No. Step 3, write down y with an equity. Plug in your slope. So we plug in the 3. So y equals 3x. We've just got to figure out the b. So now to figure out b, you plug in an x and a y. So now you got to make a choice. You have 2 ordered pairs to choose from, the first one or the second one. You're going to choose that one of those ordered pairs to use as x and y. So which one do you want to use? This first one or the second one to use as your x, y? First or second? The second one's a really good choice because you get to plug in 0. Anytime you get to use a 0, it makes good sense. Because everything times 0 is 0. And if you add 0, you just get whatever you start. But pay attention to what you're doing. When I do this, and I'm going to go -1, 0, that means I always write this down. I'm going to let x equal -1. And y is a 0. So if you put them in the wrong place, it's going to mess you up. So y is a 0. So 0 equals 3 times x, 3 times -1 plus 2 on our right side. Well, 10, 11, 15. 0 equals -3 plus b, and then you just add 3 to both sides. So b is equal to 3. And then you complete the equation of your life. You are missing this b. You now know it is a 3. Y is equal to 3x plus 3. Okay. I'm going to take roll. Remember, you have Ishmael to help. You have the poster. You have his post right there. It's been put on the announcements when he's available. You have me office hours. I'm here 7:30 on Thursday. I'm here tomorrow 7:30. I'm here today from 10 or from 11 to 11:50. Okay. Homework will shut you out at 8:30 on Thursday. And some of you have yet to start the homework. It makes me nervous. Also, some of you have not, your temporary on the Pearson has expired. So we're gonna want to make it permanent. Get before the justice of the peace and say your vow. Sarah, Alan, Aunt Calderon, Kyle, Yoring here, Clarissa, Anna, Diego, Lenani, Brianna, Elizabeth Derrick, Julia, Julia, Oscar Terrace. All the Gutierrez's. Wow. I told you I'm a Gutierrez, right? My mom was a Gutierrez. Josefina Gutierrez. Sohelia. Juliana Martinez. Juliana. Tony Molina. Tony. Carla Riveros. Elizabeth. Lennis. Monica. Kylie. And Leticia. And if you didn't get your quiz, see me so I can give it to you. And if I don't see you, I'll see you Thursday. Yeah, so I'm 0 over 0, and then so you would get a negative. If you go -5 minus 2, that's -5. Or if you go 0 minus 0, and then 2 minus -5, that's positive. Either way, 0 over any other number except 0, no matter positive or negative, always 0.
Right, but
Are you kidding me? How is that there? No, that doesn't need to be there. It's just your thinking. I don't know how that happened. Because I've been using, you're the first person who's ever said anything, and that must be, I don't know how that got on there. I have no, that's never been there before. That's so weird. No one's ever said anything. So if it's been there for the last 5 years, nobody's ever said anything. Or just maybe when I cut and paste and made this one, because I did these nicer than these handed off. So thank you. Just oh, let me stop the report.